So yes, welcome for those of you that have just joined us in the last few seconds to our very first training webinar. And most importantly, happy Valentine's Day. So hopefully your Valentine's Day has been a little bit more productive in the flower department than mine, but the day is still young over here in Western Australia, so I'm still hopeful. Okie doke. Just a few housekeeping things. You can ask questions during the webinar just by using the Q&A button on your screen, and I'll try my hardest to get through those questions during the webinar. And if I don't get to your question during the webinar, I'll actually try and get to it at the end. And also just letting you know that today's webinar is actually being recorded, so we'll be sending a link to everyone who participates today so that you can watch the recording. So you can, if there's anything you don't quite get, that's fine, you'll be able to watch that afterwards. And just to let you know what we will be covering today, two main areas of EarlyWorks we will be focusing on. The first one is getting the most out of daily communications. The second is the planning cycle in EarlyWorks, so showing you how to evidence and create a planning cycle within EarlyWorks. Now, I noticed that a lot of you have been using EarlyWorks for quite some time, so there'll probably be things, usually I find in this kind of training, there'll be things that you are already doing really well, so think of that as being affirmation that you're on the right track. And some things that I will point out, you might think, oh, I wasn't aware of that. I love it when it happens, and that's good. So hopefully you will all have some of those moments today. So I'm going to start with daily communications. So to get to daily communications, it's just under admin. So you can see I've logged in as an administrator. So if you're an educator, you won't have as many things in your list as me. The reason being is you're educated, but it won't make any difference for what we're doing today. So I'm just going to go back up to admin again and then down to daily communications. Now normally you would add a new communication each day for your room, but I'm just going to go in and show you one that's already been done, just to point out a few things that you may or may not be aware of. Okay, the first thing is visibility with daily communication. So basically, all families who have a child attending on this particular day in this room, in this kindy room, will be able to see the menu for the day, and they'll also be able to see the group notes for the day. So the group notes, usually you would use that for housekeeping type things. So the example here, just a reminder that we're still collecting yogurt containers and egg cartons, all donations will be gratefully received. Or maybe if you've realised a few families might have accidentally taken hats home, you might say, could you just check that you haven't taken a hat home, that kind of thing. So that's the top part of the screen, and that's visible to all families who have a child attending that room on that day. Then the information under this orange line is all individualised, therefore it's only visible to the individual child's family. So only Aiden's family will be able to see what he's eaten, this quantity, so you just click on the quantity for each mealtime. And if a child is offered food but they decline, you would use decline. Then this is all free text in these sections here, so you can type in whatever you want there for bottle information, nappy or toileting information, when the child slept or rested, and then any individual notes for that child. And these notes, in my view, you really want them to be relating to daily communication type things, so to do with eating, toileting and sleeping. So that's what we've got there in the free text field. This little extend button, what I'm going to do is lower everyone's hand now. So your hands should all be lowered. Yep. If you could just put your hand up if you know or you use the extend button at the moment. Just a show of hands if you actually use the extend button. Excellent. I like what I'm seeing. Some people using it, quite a few not using it. That's okay. Basically what the extend button does is turns any of these comments into an observation that can then inform the program. So if we have a look at Emma Davies here, the comment here, Emma was a great help in the lunchroom today. She helped Mary setting the tables. Let's just say this is quite a new behaviour for little Emma. Normally Emma's really reserved and it's unusual for her to spontaneously interact with any of the educators. So you might think, wow, I want to turn this into an observation and build on this now with Emma. Maybe we can get her to do more in the lunchroom and this will help her in her confidence and communication. So we just click on extend and then it's the same as a quick observation actually, turns it into a quick observation. I just select the program that I want it to go into. So let's just say I'm putting it into the June program. The title, this I really like, the title of this observation will be extended from Daily Communication Note for Emma Davies. So then you've got evidence of 1.1.3, the quality area and standard and element. All aspects of the program, including routines, are organised in ways that maximise learning. So you've got evidence there of using your daily routine kind of activity to inform the program, which is really important, and to build on the learning that happens in those times. And then the narrative or of the observation is taken from that note here. So it's just copied into there. And if I were to save that, that would just be saved as a draft observation in the June program, and I can go and finish it whenever I want to. So that's the extend button. And you'll notice now that I've pointed that out, the extend button does appear a number of times in EarlyWorks. I'm just thinking it appears in your reflections of pedagogy. So if you want to turn a reflection into an observation, you can. And then if you do that, then you've got evidence of actually acting on your critical reflection, which for those of you who've been through rating and assessment since February last year would know that that is now even more important than ever. Any comments that are added in EarlyWorks, you can also extend, use that little extend button. So I do like that. Another couple of things that I'll point out that you may not be aware of in the data communication screen. One is this ability to invite children into the room. So if you've got a little child, maybe we're in the kindy room and we've got a toddler, Hayden Eels, who's transitioning into the kindy room, I can invite him into my daily communication so that I can add information for him. So he'll appear down the bottom here somewhere. There he is, Hayden Eels, so I can include him on my daily communications. Something else to point out with daily communications is this send notification to families. So you would only want to send a push notification once at the end of the day, otherwise you will drive your families nuts and they'll start ignoring push notifications, and you don't want that to happen. So at the end of the day, when you've pretty much finished your daily communications, you might click on send notification to families, and then every family who has a child attending that day will get a push notification. The other thing that you'll notice is we've got an option down here under the individual child just to send a notification to that child's family. So let's imagine, let's forget that Aiden's in the kindy room, let's just imagine he's in the baby room, he's 8 weeks old, maybe he hasn't had a bowel action in a whole week and his mum is starting to panic. She had a big chat to you this morning when she left him with you and she's really worried, she's thinking of making a doctor's appointment. Well, lucky you, on your shift the drought breaks and Aiden finally produces a very productive nappy. So you would fill out the nappy information, then you would click save and stay, so make sure you save it, and then you could send a notification just to Aiden's family, so no other families will receive that notification, and then they'll know that they don't need to worry about going to the doctor because the drought has broken. So that's that with send to family. The other thing just to remember with daily communications is that it doesn't auto-save, so you do need to be saving. So when you're still working in daily comms, you would click save and stay. When you're ready to leave daily comms, you can click update details. So that is that for daily communications. So hopefully you've all learned something about that. The extend button, I think, is, I love that. I think that's a really powerful thing to be using in daily comms. Okay, we will move now on to programs. So to get to programs, as you would probably all be aware, you just click on Programs. Now my mouse is being a little bit slippery. There we go. Okay, I'm just going to get rid of that message. Okay, so to add a new program, we just click on the aptly named Add New Program button. And I'm going to first of all give the program a name. So let's just say our program monthly. So I'm going to call my program March, given that we're heading into March. Then I'd select the room that it's going into. So I'm going to go Kindy room. And then the framework. Now, most of the time, the default framework that you're using will come up there, which is likely to be the EYLF. But do be aware that you can customise the framework if you would like to. So, and also if you're an OSH service, you would be using My Time, Our Place, and you would probably make that your default framework. And you would do that under Maintain, and the settings is where you would manage that. We can also add your own outcomes into EarlyWorks. So what some services do is, in addition to the EYLF, they might have some of their own outcomes that they're also using. And you can do that under Maintain and Outcomes. And that's something I won't go into detail with now, but it is covered in detail in the user manual. And you get to that user manual just by clicking on the question mark there. So now we'll add record, and you'll see that for our Kindy room, we've now got the March program ready to go. What I'm going to be demonstrating today is basically one cycle in EarlyWorks, and I'm going to do that by starting with an observation, which is what we're supposed to do. And I'm actually going to start with an observation of a spontaneous experience. So by spontaneous experience, I mean an experience that I haven't planned. It's not on my program. It's just something that happened that I maybe wasn't expecting to happen, but I want to create an observation of it. So to do that, I just click on Observations and then Add New Observation. And what I suggest you do when you're doing your observations is basically fill out the general information screen first. So fill all of this out first, and then just methodically go through the tabs until you're finished. So it's quite a simple process. So for the title, I'm going to call this one Building a Skyscraper. Then the date, by default the current date comes up, but if you were crazy busy yesterday, didn't get a chance to do it, you can change the date if you want to. That's mighty fine. Now, observation style, just give me a show of hands if you're actually, and no one else can see these hands, only I can, so don't panic. Just show me, show of hands if you're actually choosing different observation styles from here. Just show of hands if you're picking observation styles. You are superstars. Some of you are. Just raise your hand if you're using different. Oh yeah, cool, excellent. Okay, some are, some aren't. Basically, this won't change the way that EarlyWorks works. All it's doing is labelling your observation of being of a particular style. And we are supposed to be using different observation styles, so a good idea to use this and actually name your observation. The only one that changes the way EarlyWorks works is the time sample. I'm not going into time sampling today, but I do suggest if you haven't experimented with this, do it. It's really good, particularly when you've got children transitioning and you want to, get a really good picture of how they're managing on their first few days in a new room. A time sample is a really good way of doing that. Okay, I'm going to call mine anecdotal record for today. Then the narrative, this is where you would just describe exactly what happened. So I'm only going to do the first sentence. I'm going to say Aidan and Alfie were in the block corner for an extended period of time. So let's just imagine Aidan and Alfie are two little Kindy boys who normally wouldn't persist for the task for very long. But on this particular day, I noticed that they've been in the block corner for quite some time, focusing on something which is most unusual for them. So I decided to go and sit down and have a look and see what they're doing. Aidan is busily trying to build a tower out of blocks, but it keeps on falling down, but it keeps on trying, keeps falling down. Then Alfie is sitting watching him, and after a little while, Alfie asks Aidan if he can help him. Aidan says, yes, please, I'm trying to build a skyscraper like the one my mummy works in, but it keeps on falling down. So Aidan says, well, maybe what we need to do is put the big blocks at the bottom and the little blocks on top. They do that, and they manage to build a skyscraper that's 10 blocks tall. They're very happy with themselves because it doesn't fall down and doesn't finish there. Then they have a discussion about the different jobs that their parents have. So they engage in a big discussion. So that's all in my narrative. So I've just written down there exactly what happened. And if you forget what to do, these little information buttons will remind you. Then the reflection of learning. So the reflection of learning is where, as the name suggests, you delve a little bit deeper and reflect on the learning that you've observed there. So I'm going to say in order, oh, hold on, that's not what I'm going to say here. I might say something like, Aidan and Alfie showed that they are learning to work together in order to achieve a goal. Now you might want to write a little bit more in there, that's okay. Something to note here that's really important, and that is when we make this observation visible to families, so we click on families can view this observation, and when we click on children observed, if we click on more than one child, which we will be today because we're observing both Aidan and Alfie, then both families, so both Aidan's family and Alfie's family, will be able to see the narrative, the reflection of learning, and if we decide to do one, a next experience. So my point here is that I wouldn't put anything in here that's inappropriate for both families to read. Save that for the observed outcome comments because they're only visible to the individual child's family. So in the reflection of learning, it's more a reflection of the learning of the whole group, so the dynamics of the group. So if it was a great big observation of a whole big group, you might say something like, you know, it was fabulous to see the children who've been in the kindy room for a longer period of time supporting the new children in this activity or something like that. Now, next experience, if I want to build on any of the learning that I've observed or the interests that have been demonstrated by the children in the observation, this is one way that I can link an experience back to this observation. There's two ways of doing it. I can do it as a next experience, or I can go back in and manually add an experience and link it back that way. So what I'm going to do is say, in order to encourage the children to engage in imaginative and role play, we will move the wooden people to the lock corner. Okay, so let's just say we've never ever observed before these boys engaging in any imaginative or role play. But because they talked for such a long time about what their parents do during the day, what jobs they have, I'm thinking if we move the wooden people to the block corner, they might use those for some role play. And I might need to initiate that, that's okay, but that's the plan. That's the next experience. Okay, there's something else here I want to draw your attention to. Flag as an individual observation. Just give me a show of hands if you're using this option, the flag as an individual ob. Just raise your hands if you're doing this at the moment. Quite a few people. Awesome. Probably about half-half. So what this does is turns and just lower the hands again. It turns a group observation into an individual observation because EarlyWorks by default, if you've got more than one child observed, it will register it as a group of. But my thinking is that, and my belief is that early childhood is such a social context that children learn from each other, they scaffold for each other, they learn with each other. It's likely that, you know, some of your observations will be of a whole group, will be of more than one child, but if you're doing individual observed outcome comments and you're planning, you're really planning, thinking about the individual child, then I think you're justified in flagging it as an individual observation. The other thing you'll notice here is the visibility. If I'm going to save this and go away and leave it, I might save it in draft form. Families can't see it when it's in draft. I might want to make it for now not visible to families, or families can view the observation. Until I've finished it and I'm mighty happy with it, I'm going to keep it not visible, but then I will make it visible when I finish. So now we go along to the tabs across the top. So experiences observed. If this was an experience from one of my programs that I'd actually planned, I would link it so that it links as being an experience observed. However, it wasn't. It was spontaneous. So I'm going to leave that blank, and then it will come up as a spontaneous experience. Children observed. All I do here is tick on the names of the children in the observation, and then if I want to, I can add the voice of the child. So for Aidan, I might say, maybe he said, I want to build a skyscraper like the one my mummy works in. And Alfie might have said, I think we need to put the big blocks first. So anything that the children have said that really evidences or highlights the learning that's happened, you can add in there under voice of the child. Then observed outcomes. Watch this part really closely. Okay, when you first click on this, the outcome groups, the EYLF outcome groups come up, or My Time Our Place if you're in an OSH setting. And if you're using EYLF, you will also get the developmental milestones. These don't come up if you've got the OSH outcomes, My Time Our Place. So you'll notice that only the outcome groups are there. So what we need to do is first of all choose the outcome group or groups that we think have been demonstrated in this observation and click on them. So for now I'm just going to go with outcome group 4. Then you can see the outcomes come up for that group. What I need to do now is continue to click this plus sign so that I actually see the outcome comments as well. So let's say we think 4.1 and 4.2 are the relevant outcomes. So I click on the plus sign for 4.1 and the plus sign for 4.2. This now gives me the ability to individualise what I tick for who. So I might think both Aidan and Alfie demonstrated 4.1, but maybe only Alfie demonstrated 4.2. So you can individualise. You don't have to tick the same outcomes. And I might even, in another observation, I might have one child who I just want to tick for this one. I can. So, and this is where you're able to customise one observation for a number of children. And then to add a comment, I just click on the Add Comment button. And then I would explain how the outcome has been demonstrated on this particular day. So I'd say Aidan, blah, 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 blah. Something about cooperation, something probably about commitment, because he committed to this task till it was finished, and definitely persistence, particularly at the beginning when he just kept on persisting before he got Alfie's help to build that tower. Can I just have a show of hands? You'll be sick of me doing this, but I'm very curious. How many of you are actually adding comments, or are confident that all of your educators are actually adding comments for your observations? Yay, this is good. Okay. Just raise your hand if you're using the comment function. So again, yeah, probably about a third of you are. So probably about a third of you may not have realised that this was here. Okay. And if I want families to be able to view the comment, I'll just unclick that box so they can see it, and then I click Save Comment. Then I would add a comment for Alfie and another comment for Alfie here. If any of your educators say, are you serious? You've been to this EarlyWorks PD and now you want us all to add comments for observations. That is crazy. How are we going to have time for that? Well, you kind of have to make time. Particularly with one like this, there are 7 dispositions for learning there. So it is most unlikely that a child is going to be demonstrating or working towards all 7 in one observation. So we need to point out which ones were evident in this observation. The other thing is that these outcomes sit with children from birth right through to a formal schooling. So, you know, a 4-year-old is going to be demonstrating curiosity very differently from a newborn baby. So that would be my stock standard answer to any educators that say, great, I haven't got time for that. Oakley dokley. Now we also have the developmental milestones. Just quickly, they work pretty much the same way as the other outcomes. I know that there is, and these are a sequence, we didn't make them up. There's one here, builds a tower H 10 blocks tall. On this occasion I would add a comment, I won't worry now, but I definitely would, because Aidan still needed help to build that tower. He didn't do it totally independently, and Alfie literally scaffolded for Aidan, so I'd make that clear in the comment. So that's the observed outcomes. Quip evidence. This is where, if you think there is anything in this observation that could be used as evidence for your quip, you would just tick the appropriate standard or element quality area, and then that will go into the services quip evidence list. Not the quip, just the quip evidence list. And then images, if you want to add a picture or 2 or 3, you can. I just click add files. I'm going to take this one and I just click open and start upload. Now, a couple of things to point out here. By default, depending on what your settings are in EarlyWorks, you will either get the JPEG for the image or the date will come up. What I suggest you do is you override that, because that's not very interesting, and put a little jotting in there instead. So focusing on building a skyscraper. So, and the reality is that this is a very sad reality, is that some of your families, no matter how much effort we put into documentation, only look at the pictures, which is a bit sad. If we put a little jotting underneath the picture, at least they're seeing, they're getting an understanding of what learning was going on in that picture. So it does become an observation in itself. So, and it just, and you'll see when we view the observation makes such a difference having the image there. Then I just tick on the children whose families I want to see this image when they view the observation. Now, if the children aren't allowed to have photos shared, a little orange camera comes up next to the name. So then all you would do is take 2 photos, and you would tag Aidan in on his photo and Alfie in on his photo. Now we've finished, so I just click update record, and that will save that observation for me. Now, because we added that next experience, what EarlyWorks has done is taken us to the edit experience screen, so that we can, there's 2 things we need to do. It's telling me what I need to do. I need to enter an experience name. So I'm going to call this experience wooden people in the block corner. So this is our next experience. This is how we're building on the learning that we've observed. The narrative is already there for me. So that's been taken from the next experience screen in the observation. The only other thing that I need to do right now is choose at least one intended outcome. So I'm going to choose a communication one for now, and then I can click update record. And now if we go back to the program list, you can see that we've now created 1 new observation and 1 experience in the March program. So to view the observation, I just click on observations and view observation. And this is what it looks like. So I don't know about you, I think that that caption really makes quite a difference. Just give me a show of hands now if you're going to start putting captions under your photos in your observations and journal entries. Yes, awesome. Just about everyone. Just raise your hands if you're going to do that. Coolio. Excellent. Okay. You can see here the other things that come up, the date, who it was created by, and you can see it was an anecdotal record. The experience observed was spontaneous. If it was one from my program, that would be listed. Now, just to let you know that families, when they view the observation, they will only see their child's name, they'll only see their child's voice, and they'll only see the observed outcome comments for their child, but they will see everything else. And they also have the ability to add a comment when they view an observation. Okay, so now I'm going to go back into the program list. Let's just imagine now it's the next day, because what I want to show you now is how you would link an observation to a planned experience. So this experience, wooden people in the block corner, let's say it's the next day and we can't believe our eyes. Aiden and Alfie are there engaging in role play with the wooden people. So damn it, we've got to do an observation. So we click on observations and add new observation. And I'm not going to do the whole observation. I really just want to focus on the linking just to show you how you would do that, make that really clear. I'm going to give the observation a title. I'm going to call it wooden people in the block corner. Maybe this time I'm just doing a jotting, and I'm not going to put the narrative in. I'm just going to go test and test. Now, experiences observed. You can see for the March program now we've got one experience saved, and that's wooden people in the block corner, and that's the one that we're observing, so I can click on that. Just to let you know though that you can observe experiences from previous programs. So if you want to observe something, create an observation from way back in your June program, you can. So just know that you do have that ability to link observations to experiences from previous programs. Children observed, let's just say it was Aiden and Alfie again. We could add the voice of the child, but I'm not going to worry. Observed outcomes, let's say it was that very first communication one. I would add a comment, but I'm not going to worry now. I could add quick evidence, I could add a picture, but we won't worry. I'm just going to go update record. And now, from the observation list here for the March program, you can actually start to see the planning cycle being evidenced here. We started with a spontaneous, an observation of a spontaneous experience, building a skyscraper. You can see that we've done the narrative and we've reflected on it. That just means we've done the reflection of learning. And you can see that we've extended on that with the next experience. And this hyperlink here would take me to that next experience if I wanted to have a look at it. And you can see it's been evaluated, and by evaluated it just means it's been observed. So an observation has been created of this particular experience, and in that observation the children's learning would have been evaluated. That's why it comes up there in the evaluation column. Then that new observation is up here, wooden people in the block corner. It was a jotting this time, and this time we didn't flag it as being individual, so it's come up as a group observation, whereas last time it was an individual of. The experience observed, it was an actual experience this time, wooden people in the block corner. If I click on that, that would take me to that experience. You can see we've reflected on it, but we've not yet linked a next experience to that observation, but we can always go back in and do it afterwards. So now what I want to show you is how you would go about manually adding an experience into EarlyWorks, because sometimes you're not always going to do an experience direct as a next experience from an observation. You might want to do some forward planning or just add some experiences manually, and you can do that. To do that, you would click on experiences, remembering that experiences are your planning. So if you're doing any planning, you click on experiences. Then I would click add new experience, and basically I just go through. It's quite similar to an observation actually as the process goes. So let's just say we're concerned about the children's cutting art skills. It's getting maybe towards the end of the year in the kindy room, and you've just noticed that a lot of the children are really trying hard to use scissors, and they're wanting to use scissors in their creative craft type activity that they're doing, but they're getting a little frustrated because they're struggling to have the fine motor control to use the scissors. So we might just call this experience for now cutting out skills. Not very exciting, but it does say what we're doing. Then the experience date. We've recently added this now. We can actually choose what date appears when it comes up on the program. So you might say, I want to start this next Monday, so I'm going to put the 18th. So it'll come up on your program on the 18th. Then we would describe in the narrative what we're going to be doing. So the children will be given shapes to cut out and blah, 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 blah. Whatever the activity is going to be, you would describe it there. Then up here, the evaluation of learning, you don't actually have to put anything in there. EarlyWorks does that for you. So when you link an observation to this experience, so when you create an observation and you say experience observed cutting out skills, it will come up here as evidenced in, and it'll be linked to that particular observation. And then the evaluation of the experience. Can I have a show of hands to see who uses this box, evaluation of experience, at the moment? Just let me know if you're actually using it, evaluation of experience. Yeah, a few people are. Okay, basically what you're doing here is evaluating how effective this experience was in achieving your intended outcomes. So you're not evaluating the children's learning so much. That happens in the observation or the journal entry. This is really when you're focusing on the actual experience. So let's just, and you wouldn't do this till you've actually created an observation. It's like the final thing that you would do. So we might find that the shapes we gave the children were too intricate. So we might say something like, next time we do this experience, we need to have a wider variety of shapes because a lot of the children struggled with these ones. They were too small and there were too many corners or whatever. So you're really evaluating the effectiveness of the actual experience there. The other thing that we've got on this screen is visibility option. So if I'm wanting to save this and come back to it later, I can save it as a draft. Families can't see drafts when they view the program. I might want to make it not visible to families. Maybe I'm planning something for way in the future and I don't want my families to see it just yet. So I might want to make it not visible for now. Visible only to families linked to children planned for. This is super powerful if you've got children that maybe there's a child and you're working on a particular behaviour with that child, or maybe you have a child with special needs that you're doing an individual program for. You might not want other families seeing the experiences that you're planning for that child. So you can just click on this one, and only the children who are being planned for, only their families will see those experiences. Or you can have visible to all families. The default position is visible to all families, so if you want to change it, you need to physically change it. Now we need to go through these tabs across the top. So preceding observations. So here is where we link this experience to the observations that led us to planning this experience. So if we had documented in our observations in one of our programs, or maybe a number of times we might have noticed that the children were struggling to use scissors, we would link this experience to those obs. However, sometimes you might not have documented it, but you still have noticed it. So you might want to use one of these non-program related options. So you might want to call this educator-initiated intentional teaching. And you can have a non-program related option, prompt, as well as linking it to one of your observations or journal entries, or a number of observations and journal entries. That's okay. Or maybe if it was from family input or spontaneous or community, you can use either of those. And many of you using the non-program related, usually when I get to this point, people say, oh my goodness, I didn't know that was there. Just give me a show of hands if you're actually using that non-program related option at the moment. Yeah, some of you are, not many, yeah. This is one of the things, don't feel bad if you hadn't noticed it was there. It's one of those things that a lot of people only realise when they do this training at this point, when they've been using EarlyWorks for a little while. Then the children planned for. This is where we would just indicate the children or tick the children who we're planning for. I'm going to say all children. Then the intended outcomes. So what outcomes are we intending to develop? I'd say probably one of these. Resources. This is pretty cool. If you, and we've only just added this in the last couple of months, if you want to add an image or a PDF to help with your planning, you can add it here. So let's just say you were planning an obstacle course for your kindy children. You might go and set the obstacle course up as room leader on a Friday afternoon, take a photo of it, and then save it here so that the other educators can all, when they do the obstacle course, they set it up the same way every day. Or maybe you might have a PDF of a recipe or something. So it's to do with your planning. And then quick evidence, you can add to the quick evidence list as well. And then I just click on update record. And then I can see my cutting out skills experience has been saved under the experiences for March. If I go back to my program list, So if we wanted to create an observation now of that experience, I'm just going to very quickly show you how you would link it. You would just go observations, add new observation, and I'm just going to show you here the experience observed. We would just link it to cutting out skills. So that's how you would link your observation to that particular experience. So the linking now, I'm hoping that you're a little bit more comfortable with. What I'm going to do now is show you what this program looks like now that we've actually added a little bit to it. So you can see the way EarlyWorks works. You have your outcomes in full up the top, and then in the actual program we just have links to the outcomes up here, or the number reference for the outcomes. So you can see we started with wooden people in the block corner. It was initiated from this anecdotal record building a skyscraper. We've got the description of the experience there, and I love these links to children. So this very clearly shows you who was in the preceding observation that led to that experience being planned, who was planned for, and so far who's been observed. And we can see we've just got this one observation on the 14th. And then the cutting out skills, the only difference here is we haven't got any children's names in the preceding observations, we've just got educator initiated. Now I'm going to also just quickly show you now a program that has more in it. So you can see how a program will look over time. A couple of things I want to point out here. The first is that you can observe and experience as many times as you want to, and then it will come up. There'll be a link then to that observation or journal. So you can link a journal or an observation, or both, to an experience. Then if you've gone back into the experience and evaluated the effectiveness of the experience, that will come up here on the program under evaluation. And if you have added images, the images will come up here. So this is just showing how far apart to plant the seedlings. What else have we got here? This one is the photo of the book. Some people do that. It's a really good idea. Take a photo of a book they're going to read so you can find it easily. And there's some instructions on how to make a scarecrow. So that's how your program looks after a while. Now families, something that I want to point out now is that families, they see the experience column, so they'll see everything in the experience column, the name of the experience, and if you've added any images or PDFs, they'll see those. The details, the family will see this, the details comment, so the description of the experience they will see. In the link to children, families only see their child's name. So they won't see any other children's names, they'll just see their children's names there. And the evaluation column, the family doesn't get to see at all. So that's important for you to know that, so that you know when you're doing your evaluation of an experience, that won't be visible to families. Families don't get that column. So that's how your program looks. Something else I just wanted to point out was your journals. So just a show of hands of who does the journal. Can you put your hand up if you use the journal? Yeah, quite a few people. Yeah, so the journal can be whatever you want it to be actually. It's a form of observation. I'm going to show you one. You would enter it in the same way as you would an observation. However, usually the journal, most services would use the journal perhaps to evidence the room planning cycle by doing maybe a journal every day or every week, just highlighting what's happened in the whole room over that day or over that week. So this one's, and there's nowhere that it says you have to do a daily journal. You could do a weekly one, that is absolutely fine. So in this one you can see that they've done just a little paragraph on the main things that have happened, the exciting stuff that's gone on in that room during that week. You can enter as many images as you like. So I think they've added 8 here, and you can see here how the captions really bring the images to life. Then all the children's voices come up underneath. And then you've got the reflection of learning. In a journal, the reflection of learning tends to be more a reflection of the learning of the whole group, so rather than individual children. So the children learned about the importance of caring for our environment through planting the seedlings. The children made lots of discoveries about colours, and there are so many coloured things around them all the time. Children also started noticing beginning sounds, particularly for brown bear, and the children also learned about the importance of taking turns and sharing when they were planting the seedlings. So it's more a reflection of the whole room's learning. So that's what is there, and then you've got the observed outcomes at the bottom. Now it's up to you. My thinking is that because a journal most of the time is used really to document the learning of a whole room, it's not really necessary, I don't believe, to do individual outcome comments, but again, that's a service decision. You might say, oh yes it is, and that's mighty fine. The other thing that you've got here is this multimedia view, which is lovely with journals. So it basically turns the journal into a slideshow. So if you have been lucky enough to be gifted with a big screen, or better still, a smartboard, you could actually have this playing for the families when they collect their children, and then the voice of the child comes up the side. So that is nice. Okay, now one last thing I want to show you with programs that you might not have been aware of is educators can actually be talking to each other behind the scenes by using program comments. So I'm wondering if any of you, is anyone using the program comments at the moment? Just raise your hand if you're using program comments. Yeah. Ah, cool. Quite a few people. Well, probably about half are using program comments. I'll show you how you would use those. You just click on the row of the program. So in the June program, I know some comments have been added, so I'm just going to show you those ones. So I get to edit program, then I just click on comments. And here I can see the comments that have been added, or I can add a new comment myself. When I add a new comment, you can see it's made very clear there that comments here are not available to families. They can't see these comments. So an example here, an educator said, the children were amazing today at both naming colours and identifying beginning sounds. When I read brown bear, I was amazed to find that most of the children were able to correctly identify the colours of the animals in the story. This was after we'd read the story, which does name the colours, but I think it made me think that now might be a good time to explore colour, maybe with the colour of the week. So there's one comment from an educator and someone's replied to that. That's a really good idea, Emily. We've been focusing so much on getting the VeggiePatch up and running that I don't think I've been noticing the children's milestones so much. I think having a colour of the week is a great idea, and maybe we could add that to our calendar too, so the families know and can follow up at home. So by using these program comments, you're really evidencing 4.2.1 professional collaboration. So you've got beautiful evidence there of the educators collaborating and also critically reflecting as a group. So your individual critical reflections can happen in the reflections of pedagogy, and that's where you really reflect on your own practice. But reflecting as a group, a team, can happen here in the comments. Also, if you've got educators that aren't there all the time, some educators might come in Monday, Tuesday, and someone else comes in Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, they can communicate with each other. So, and you've also got this extend button. So you may want to use one of these comments and turn it into an observation to then inform the program. So then you've got evidence of your critical reflection. I believe this is a form of critical reflections, informing your program, which will be really important. It's a fabulous thing to do anyway, but it's pretty powerful evidence then for your rating and assessment if you've got that coming up. So now I think that's it for programs. What I want to show you now though, before we love and leave each other on this Valentine's Day, is show you the Generate Planning Cycle report. Has anyone had a play with this? It's right down the bottom of admin, and we only added it after the shutdown, the Christmas shutdown. Can I just have a show of hands of who has actually had a play with that or used it at all? A few people have. Yeah, it's pretty fantastic. I'll show you how it works. I would use this for two purposes. One as a diagnostic, so to see if your educators are actually using the planning cycle in their, I just realised the screen, Rebecca, is it still visible there? Yeah, it is still visible. I've just lost a green line on the screen, but Rebecca tells me it's mighty fine. Okay. Yeah, I'll use this for two purposes. Generate the planning cycle report. One is as a diagnostic, so to ensure that you are actually doing your linking and creating a planning cycle for each child and for the room. And secondly, to evidence the planning cycle when you get assessed. So you can do it at a room level or at a child level. So I'm just going to show you for a child right now because we are quickly running out of time. Then I'd select the room that the child is in. So I'm going to go Kindy room. Then I just select the child's names. I'll go Aidan Davies. Now, when I start with a child, I can't enter a program because I don't start with a program. I actually start with an observation. So all of the observations that have been added for that child, created for that child will come up, and you just decide at what point you want to start your evidencing of the planning cycle. So I'm going to start back here. And what EarlyWorks does is magically extract, and it's a report. So it doesn't take everything from the observation. It just takes the narrative and we call that the observe. So that's the description of what happened. That's your observe, and we've used the language, the EYLF language of the planning cycle. Then the analyse. Analyse is basically your reflection of learning from the observation and your outcome comments. So that's your analysis of the learning. And then plan, that's any experience that has been linked to this observation. So if I've added a next experience or I've manually linked an experience to this observation, it will come up here. Phew, I've got one, building a city with blocks. So that's my next experience. I've got the description of the experience here and the intended outcomes. So that's what EarlyWorks extracts from the plan. And then the act is actually children engaging in that experience. And if I have created an observation and linked it to that experience, it will come up here now. Sometimes you'll get more than one observation, or you might get an observation and a journal. This is where you've got to decide what tangent, what path you're going to take in your planning cycle, because planning cycles are messy. So you might go off on different tangents, so you've got to decide which avenue you're going to take to evidence this time. So I'm going to go with the observation. So then I've got the observe again, that's the narrative, the analyse, which is the reflection of learning and the outcome comments. And, ooh, what's this? Reflect. If I evaluated that experience that I've observed, so if back here in the actual experience, I've done an evaluation of that experience, that comes up as reflect, which is nice because then you've got evidence of reflecting. And then if I've added to that with the next experience, it'll come up here. I've got it in two. I'm just going to take that one. And I could keep on going, but I'm going to stop. So when you think that you've got enough there, so maybe you've got your 2 complete cycles or however many you want, you would print the steps. Then it comes up as a beautiful Word document that is basically all of the information that we've just pulled up there. So we've got the starting observation, then the next plan, then the act, observe, and so on. So this is basically what you've just seen, but in a report form, and it creates a Word document. Now, if you find that you're doing this with your educators and they say, I know that I created an observation of building a city with blocks, ring Jane, tell her EarlyWorks is broken, it's not working. Before you ring me and tell me EarlyWorks is broken, just go in and check that the linking has been done. Just make sure the educator has actually linked that observation back to the experience. So under experiences observed, they've done the linking. That's really important. Now, what some services do as far as evidencing the group and the individual planning cycle is use your journals, and this is entirely up to you, to evidence the group planning cycle. and then would use observations to evidence individual planning cycles. But that's up to you. That's an individual decision. Something else that I just want to point out, any of the printed reports in EarlyWorks, so like this planning cycle report, the children's learning journey, your QUIP, if you would like your service logo put up here instead of EarlyWorks logo, even though EarlyWorks logo is mighty pretty, you might prefer to have your service logo there, let us know, send us your logo and we can do that for you. And because we love you so much, we won't even charge you for it. So that's that. Okay, we've got to the end. It is about 5 to 12. That went mighty quickly. If anyone's got any questions, if you could type them in now under Q&A. None have come up yet. Anyone typing away? No, maybe no one's got any questions. I'll just click on here. Ah, cool. Lovely. Okay, a few people have just added really nice comments, which is always good for my ego. Thank you for that. Can you use 2 frameworks at once? Yes, you can, definitely. You would just do that under your maintain and outcomes. Yeah, and you can add an extra framework there, no problem at all. And you can have 2 coming up at once. And I can show you how to do that individually if you like. So, yeah, so thanks Kylie for that question. Anyone else got any questions? Actually, a lot of people do have 2 frameworks. They'll have EYLF, a kindy curriculum. Yeah, EYLF and kindy curriculum is common. Would a video be able to watch later? Yes, it will. Brett, we will have a video up. We will be sending you, hopefully by the end of today, depending on if there's any editing required, with a link to the recording of this. So you'll be able to share this with your service, no problem at all. Of course, I know a lot of the teachers are busy, so they can't get here today. So yeah, we will, and we'll also have it up on our website under support. So if you go support, and then I think it's online webinars or something like that, monthly webinars, it'll come up there. Okay, well I think I shall love and leave you now. Just letting you know that we will be doing next month. Next month's webinar will be on. Oh, can you insert a screenshot into a journal? You could insert a screenshot as an image. Yep, you could insert a screenshot as an image. Good question. I'd love to know what you want to screenshot in there. That sounds interesting. Yeah, sounds good. Next month, the webinar will be on critical reflection and also tasks and events. And we've added a little bit to tasks. You might have noticed that we've got checklists in there now that weren't there before. So yeah, we'll be covering that next time, and that will be on the 13th of March. We're also going to be hosting a webinar specifically for parents, and we're planning on doing that. We haven't set a date yet, but we're thinking we'll probably do that in March, so watch out for that. Just going to scroll down. Does every child need a planning cycle per month? That's really a service decision. How you, we basically provide a tool, and then how you use that tool is kind of up to you. I would say that you would need to be looking at every child, revisiting their goals probably at least once a month. When you do that, just something to point out, with an observation, in the narrative you can include evidence from all over the place. When you revisit a child's goals, you might call it revisiting Emma's goals, and then in the narrative, think of that narrative as an opportunity for gathering evidence, and you might take parent comments, you might take notes that you've taken from a conversation that you had with the child. Use lots of evidence to be informing your revisiting of a child's goals, and then you're planning for what you want to achieve with that child. Yeah, that's important. That's a good question. So thank you for that. I think that's it, actually. I'm hoping that by the time you all go back into your services, maybe there'll be some flowers waiting for you. I'm going to go and check and see if someone's delivered flowers for me now. I'm sure they will. Maybe the florist got the address wrong. I don't know. Every year the florist gets the address wrong. Never mind. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you so much for coming along. I hope you found it helpful, and please feel free to make contact with us at any time. The email that you can make contact with us with is support@earlyworks.net.au, so don't be afraid of using that. Okay, thank you, and look forward to seeing you at next month's webinar. Take care.